Discover the heartwarming moment when a blind date's shocking reaction changed everything forever. Sarah's heart raced as she stood behind the counter of the Willow Creek Diner, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the greasy warmth of burgers sizzling on the griddle. Tonight was no ordinary evening. She was going on a blind date. Her best friend, Karen, had pushed her into it, insisting that Sarah deserved a moment of joy beyond the daily grind of motherhood and work. But joy was a strange companion for Sarah, one she hadn't felt in a while. She glanced at Jake, her spirited 8-year-old, running around with the other kids outside, the golden leaves swirling around him in a crisp breeze. The doorbell jingled, and in walked Mark, tall, handsome, with an air of confidence that made Sarah's stomach flutter and churn. As he approached, she felt an invisible barrier between their worlds, a disconnect fueled by her humble diner life and his polished demeanor. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the noise of the diner faded, replaced by the thumping of her heart. "So, you work here?" Mark asked, a hint of surprise lacing his tone. "Yes, just part-time while raising my son," Sarah replied, forcing a smile but feeling the weight of the words heavy on her tongue. Their dinner was punctuated with clinking dishes and laughter from nearby patrons. With each passing moment, Sarah's nerves clashed against the warmth of the diner. The atmosphere brimmed with light and life, but Sarah felt painfully aware of her own insecurities looming in the corners. When Mark casually mentioned that hard work leads to success, a rush of tension filled the air. She felt the fire ignite within her. "It's not always that simple," she said, barely containing the intensity in her voice. "Some of us work 2 jobs, struggle to make ends meet. Just last month, I had to choose between paying a bill or getting Jake a new pair of shoes." To her shock, Mark leaned in, his expression softening. "I get it," he said, his voice measured. "I spent years volunteering for veterans. I saw what it means to work hard with little reward. It opened my eyes to the privileges I had taken for granted." In that vulnerable exchange, they forged a connection deeper than either expected. But just as quickly, that fragile bond was ripped away when Sarah felt the weight of her inadequacies crashing down. Unworthy. Less than. She forced a smile and thanked him for the evening, abruptly ending the date under the warm glow of the diner lights, tears threatening to spill. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Days turned into a week, but the memory of that night lingered, haunting Sarah's thoughts like an unfinished painting. Just when she tried to bury the experience, the doorbell jingled once more. There stood Mark in the diner, hands stuffed in his pockets, a newfound determination written across his face. "I want to help," he said simply, words cascading into the air between them. "I want to support local initiatives that uplift the community." The diner watched, holding its breath as the past collided with the present, charged with both hope and doubt. The small-town atmosphere buzzed with curiosity, each repeated glance signaling the risk in their discovery. Sarah's heart raced, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Could she really open that door again? Or would the weight of her past keep her from taking a step forward into whatever this could be? As Mark's gaze met hers, questions hung thick in the air, leaving them on a precipice. What awaited her beyond this moment? The bell above the diner door jingled again, catching Sarah off guard. She startled, clutching a dish towel in a nervous grip. The energy shifted around them, as if time paused to allow this new chapter to unfold. Mark's expression held a glimmer of hope, mixed with a determination that struck her like a thunderbolt. This was more than just a casual visit. "Help?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. The idea of accepting assistance was foreign and daunting. He took a step closer, his intensity drawing her in. "Yes, help. I see the hard work you put in here and the love you have for Jake. There are community projects that could use someone like you. Your experience matters." Sarah's breath hitched. The thought of stepping into something more expansive, a project, a purpose, felt both thrilling and terrifying. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Mark nodded, understanding dancing in his eyes. You don't have to commit right now. Just think about it. Sometimes the hardest step is the first one. Jake darted in through the door, laughter spilling from his lips as he raced towards them. He was a whirlwind of energy, a reminder of the joys that kept Sarah going. His face lit up when he spotted Mark. Mom! Can we have ice cream? Before Sarah could respond, Mark knelt down to be eye to eye with Jake. How about this? If you help make the best ice cream sundaes in Willow Creek, you can have as much as you want. Jake's small face scrunched in thought, then burst into a wide grin. Deal. Sarah's heart swelled as she watched Mark interact with her son. There was something about this man that felt right, like a missing piece finally falling into place. As they gathered ingredients together, a rainbow of toppings, scoops of creamy ice cream, Sarah found herself laughing along with them. For the first time since their date, her shoulders released their tension, and colors of joy painted her worries in the background. Do you know what a hot fudge sundae needs? Mark asked, flashing an infectious smile at Jake. A sprinkle of teamwork. That simple statement hung in the air like a mantra. Teamwork. The word shimmered with a promise, a life raft against her struggles. As they piled whipped cream high, Sarah's gaze slipped to Mark. Maybe he was right. Part of her journey could include taking risks, reaching out for support. Later, as they had their ice cream in hand, Jake excitedly chattered about plans for the next school project, his innocent enthusiasm revitalizing Sarah's hope. Mark leaned back, enjoying the soft laughter with them, and in that moment, Sarah realized feeling connected wasn't something to shy away from. It was something to embrace. But darkness lurked in her thoughts. Could she really let someone in? Could she share her dreams once more or risk being hurt again? Suddenly, Mark's phone buzzed on the table, breaking her reverie. He glanced at the screen, his brows furrowing ever so slightly. I have to take this, he said, stepping away to answer. As he pulled away, Sarah couldn't shake the creeping uncertainty. He was kind and genuine, but the nagging feeling in her gut felt all too familiar. If she opened her heart and he chose to walk away, would she survive the fall? Watching him talk, a question formed like a silent prayer. What if this was her chance to rewrite her own story, rather than be bound by what was? When Mark returned, his demeanor was different. Eager, but also distant. I need to figure something out, he said, his voice laced with tension. Can we talk tomorrow? Sarah nodded, a knot of anxiety tying her stomach. As the sun sank steadily, dimming the diner lights, she couldn't help but wonder, was this just the beginning or an impending end? The diner was growing dimmer as evening settled outside, casting a gentle glow from the flickering neon sign. Sarah held the ice cream cup in her hands, the coldness seeping through the paper. It felt grounding, like a tether to the moment. Jake was lost in his own world of toppings, enthusiastically piling jelly beans and sprinkles atop his sundae. But Mark's request to talk the next day felt like a weight on her chest. It echoed in her mind, a refrain that wouldn't fade. What could be so urgent? Was it about their whole dynamic or just something practical? She looked over at him, his back turned to her as he spoke on the phone. The shadows across his face masked what she thought she saw: hope, urgency, fear, or maybe all three. As Jake laughed and flicked a glob of whipped cream in her direction, Sarah caught it just in time, but her heart ached for clarity. The innocence of her son's joy contrasted sharply with the swirl of doubt tightening around her. She wanted to believe in possibilities, in the idea of stepping out of her self-imposed cage, but the walls were sturdy. Mark ended the call and returned to them, an easy smile finding its way back onto his face. The tension still lingering in his eyes didn't escape Sarah. He was smiling, but it was a mask over something deeper. Sorry about that. Just some work stuff. Are we ready for this Sunday? As Jake continued to navigate the toppings, Sarah felt the urge to probe, to find out what had twisted Mark's demeanor. Is everything okay? She asked tentatively, hoping to breach the crack forming between them. He hesitated, and for a fleeting moment, doubt flickered in his expression. It will be, soon. Then he glanced down at Jake, who had just declared himself the Sunday king. What about you, buddy? Do you think you can handle the crown tomorrow at school? The shift in focus was immediate. Jake puffed out his chest in pride, declaring, I'll make the biggest Sunday ever. The joy in his voice filled the space, and for a moment, Sarah felt the heaviness lift. But as she took another glance at Mark, she feared the conversation she needed to have, the one that would lay bare her heart, was being postponed indefinitely. She took a deep breath. Mark, I appreciate everything you're doing. I really do, but... He held her gaze, the intensity coming back. I understand if you're scared, Sarah. It's okay to feel that way. I'm here. And I wouldn't ask for tomorrow if it wasn't important. His voice, steady and reassuring, warmed something inside her. Maybe it was okay to feel afraid and still take that leap of faith. But doubts lingered, clawing at the background. What consequences would come next if she chose to open up? Can we just take a moment? She gulped, her voice breaking slightly. I need to think. He nodded, respecting her need for space. In that silence, their eyes searched for understanding. Mark reached over to gently squeeze her hand, a simple gesture with a weight of meaning behind it. Jake giggled as he took a spoonful of his sundae, smearing some whipped cream across his face as he watched his mom and Mark. You guys should totally have ice cream too. It makes everything better. It was a silly suggestion from a child, but in the softness of its delivery, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Ice cream had a way of making people feel lighter, didn't it? That's true, Mark replied, grinning, and Sarah saw the edge of tension soften around his mouth. But as the moment stretched, twisting through warmth and fear, she found her heart pounding louder at the thought of the conversation that loomed ahead. Jake, blissfully unaware, continued to relish his creation, and Sarah's mind danced with questions. Did she want to confront those feelings tomorrow? What sounds awaited them in the uncertainty of the next moment? As they finished up their Sundays, the evening deepened around them, and she realized she would have to choose soon. But how? Would she have the courage to embrace this newfound connection or close the door before it truly opened? Tomorrow would tell the tale. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the diner's windows. The neon sign outside pulsed like a heartbeat, and Sarah's heart raced in sync with its steady glow. She felt the cold remnants of ice cream sliding down to the bottom of her cup. It was hard to focus on much else besides the swirling emotions in her chest. Jake, who now sported a whipped cream crown, was finishing his sundae like a champ, his laughter echoing blissfully in the cozy space around them. Sarah glanced over at Mark. He was watching Jake with an almost paternal pride, but there was that flicker again in his eyes, an urgency barely concealed by the warmth of his smile. Let's get you cleaned up, Sunday King, she said, forcing a smile, hoping to elevate the moment. She stood and started to wipe Jake's face, the messier the better, just like their lives felt at that moment. Mom. You missed a spot. Jake squealed, bouncing in his seat, the laughter infectious. Sarah chuckled, her heart lightening just a notch. Still, an undercurrent of anxiety ran through her. She had to confront Mark. It was that simple. As Jake took his last bite, Mark leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. So, Sarah, I've been thinking about everything. About us. He took a deep breath, and Sarah felt the air shift around them. This was at the moment she had been both dreading and longing for. Me too, she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside. I've been thinking about tomorrow, about talking. Good, because he hesitated, locking eyes with her, determination sparking behind the tension. I need to tell you something that's been weighing heavily on me. Okay, she replied, her pulse quickening. She could feel the way the atmosphere changed, thickening with unspoken words. She needed to be ready for whatever was coming, but part of her was scared. What if opening up led to heartbreak? What if it brought about a chance she wasn't prepared to take? Jake, oblivious to the moment, chose that instant to declare, "I want to be a superhero today." "Can we all be superheroes?" His enthusiasm cut through the tension like a hot knife through butter. Mark chuckled, glancing at Sarah, and she felt her heart soften. Maybe the kid was right. They could be heroic, at least in their own imperfect way. "Of course, bud," Mark said, ruffling Jake's hair. "We'll all wear capes tomorrow." The spirit of the diner took a turn. They could be lighthearted for now, but the heavy conversation remained uncracked, like an egg waiting to break open. "Can I wear a blue cape?" Jake asked, his eyes wide with excitement, and instantly the mood shifted again. "Blue it is," Sarah replied, smiling, but as she watched her son's joy spill out like the melting ice cream, she felt the weight of her own choices looming overhead, a large cloud ready to shower doubts. But the moment couldn't be stolen away. "Jake, my sweet hero," she began, kneeling beside him, "life can be like trying to climb after a big fall. You got to take that first step back up again. Like climbing up to get my superhero suit," he shouted, squeezing her arm. "Yes. Exactly." Mark's warm voice followed through, excitement radiating from his features. "So, we should always remember that our hearts should be open." And there it was, Mark finally saying it aloud, the push she needed. The sweetness threaded through their laughter opened doors she didn't know could exist. Yet, the night stretched on, and with every ounce of joy swirling around the table, Sarah still felt that beguiling darkness flicking at the corners of her mind. Would she let this moment slip away or use it to leap into the unknown? Tomorrow beckoned with its promise and its fears, and she had to choose. Could she step into this future unguarded? As Jake let out a loud cheer, her heart whispered back, urging her to embrace what was about to unfold. But she had one final thought dancing on the tip of her tongue. What would it really take to let go and dive in? Tomorrow would be a new beginning, or perhaps a painful ending. Either way, she knew the truth awaited. As the evening wore on, the diner filled with the soft clatter of dishes and a warm hum of conversation, Sarah felt a blend of warmth and unease inside her. Jake was buzzing, his laughter spilling over into the air, lighting up faces nearby. Mark leaned back in his seat, allowing himself a few moments to relish the laughter. But Sarah could see that determination still hovered in his gaze, waiting. "Ready to go?" she asked, breaking the spell that cloaked them in blissful ignorance. She grabbed her purse, trying to draw Jake's attention from his imaginary cape. "Wait. I want to say goodbye to my Sunday." He nearly leaped up from his chair. The three of them laughed again, and while she appreciated Jake's exuberance, it only amplified her own internal uncertainty. As dust from the streetlights started to seep in through the diner's windows, she could almost feel the weight of tomorrow's conversation pressing down on her shoulders. Mark glanced toward the door, and for a split second, something flickered behind his eyes, a mixture of possibility and fear. "You know," he began, "tomorrow feels important. Maybe we could make it something special." "Special?" Jake echoed, running in circles around their table, his superhero persona fully taking flight. "Yeah. Like, superhero special." Mark's eyes sparkled, but Sarah sensed the challenges hovering in the background. "Sure, we could brainstorm," she started, but Jake cut her off, eyes bright with excitement. "I want to fly," he shouted, then bounded back to their booth, pretending he was soaring through the sky. "Just don't jump from high places, please," Sarah called after him, half laughing, half serious. Mark chuckled, but she could see the flickering doubt he tried to conceal, an acknowledgement that tomorrow would inevitably bring up conversations best avoided. "Let us go home and get some rest." Mark's voice was firm, but there was a softness behind his words that stayed with her. Would he really be able to share what was troubling him? Or would the moment dissolve like sugar into warm water, leaving nothing but a bitter aftertaste? As they stepped outside the diner, the cool night air embraced them. Sarah twisted her fingers in her jacket pockets, feeling that slight chill creep into her bones, a reflection of her anxiety. Jake continued his play, but there was a fierce urgency in her heart. She wanted to be ready, to hear everything Mark needed to say, but part of her longed to shield them both from the raw truth. Sarah? Mark's voice broke through her thoughts. He was standing next to her, his brow creased with concern. Whatever happens tomorrow, just know I care about you both. A lot. A soft smile tugged at her lips, yet something heavy lingered just beneath the surface. Thank you, Mark. I care too. Her heart raced again, not in fear this time, but in hope, a possibility she yearned to embrace. The three of them made their way to the car, the warmth of their laughter drifting back into the cool night. As they settled inside, Jake turned to them, wide-eyed and earnest. Tomorrow's gonna be the best day ever, right? She glanced at Mark, and for an instant, the promise of tomorrow felt tangible, a fragile thread they could either weave together or let slip through their fingers. With Jake's hope radiating brightly, she found herself whispering, "Yes, buddy. Tomorrow will be amazing." Sarah gripped the steering wheel, feeling the battle of her own emotions. Was she truly ready for what tomorrow might reveal? The weight of uncertainty filled the car, like the shadows cast by trees lining the road. Behind every heartbeat lay potential that could unravel everything she thought she knew. As they pulled into their driveway, the stars twinkled softly above, holding the secrets of all those untold stories waiting for them to emerge. In that luminous darkness, Sarah caught herself holding her breath. Would tomorrow bring a breakthrough or more questions? Hey, are we really going to wear capes? Jake interrupted her thoughts, his voice sweet and clear. Yes, Jake. We'll all be superheroes. But would they be ready to face the challenge? Inside her heart, an unexpected question arose. What would it truly mean to be brave? Would she discover the answer tomorrow or find herself grappling with even greater uncertainties? The sunlight broke through the curtains, splashing the room with dappled light. Sarah stirred awake, the soft sounds of Jake's playful humming drifting in from the living room. She felt that familiar flutter in her chest, a mix of anticipation and nerves. Today was the day. She dressed quickly, slipping into comfy jeans and a bright t-shirt, hoping to channel some of Jake's boundless energy. As she brushed her hair, she caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back seemed both familiar and foreign. Today felt like a turning point. Mom. Can we have pancakes for breakfast? Jake's voice called out, the plea irresistible. Sure. Sarah responded, her voice bubbling with warmth. The smell of pancakes soon filled the air as she poured batter onto the griddle. Do you think we should wear capes for breakfast? Jake asked, peering around the corner, his face expectant. Why not? Sarah laughed, flipping a pancake. Superheroes need fuel. Mark walked in, his expression softening as he caught sight of Jake's excitement. Smells great in here, he said, moving toward the table. Just being super. Jake puffed out his chest, eyes wide with seriousness. For a moment, everything felt perfect. The morning light washed over them, and laughter bounced off the walls, warming the chill that had lingered in her heart. But the undercurrent of the day loomed above, like a storm cloud waiting to break. After breakfast, the three of them stood in the living room, a circle of palpable energy. Jake twirled around, cape fluttering behind him, a force of innocence that filled the space. All right, champ, Mark said, kneeling down to Jake's level. Do you remember the plan for today? Yep. We're going to be superheroes and save the world. Jake exclaimed, fists in the air. Mark smiled, but his gaze flicked to Sarah. The unsaid words hung in the air between them. She could almost see the heaviness sitting around him like a cloak. Just a little while, Mark said, keeping his tone light, then the real adventure begins. I can't wait. Jake jumped up and down before finally darting toward the door. Their son's enthusiasm sparked a flicker of hope in Sarah's chest. Could they really turn this into a day of joy rather than an ordeal? As they drove to the park, an air of unspoken words lingered. Jake babbled about superheroes, oblivious to the silent tension. Mark stole glances at Sarah, shadows passing over his face. It felt like they were balancing on the precipice, ready to tumble. At the park, laughter echoed around them. Children ran wild, mothers watched over them, and the smell of freshly cut grass was intoxicating. Jake was off like a shot, spinning in circles, twirling his cape and gleefully shouting his plans to save the world. Sarah leaned against a tree, eyes flickering to Mark. "We need to talk," she said softly. Mark took a deep breath, pressing his lips into a thin line. "I know. After he plays, right?" "Sure," she replied, not fully believing it. Time melted away as Jake delighted in his make-believe universe. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows. Despite the laughter, Sarah felt a knot tightening in her stomach like a fist. They couldn't keep avoiding the truth forever. "Mark," she started again, but he lifted a hand, stopping her. "Let him have this, Sarah. Just a little longer." His voice was firm yet gentle. A wave of compassion washed over her. She nodded, watching Jake with newfound clarity. Maybe they could weave today's joy into their discussion, blending the good with the bad, superhero masks hiding their vulnerabilities, at least for now. As sunset painted the sky in flaming oranges and soft pinks, Jake ran to them, breathless and radiant. "Can we go home and have a superhero party?" With a smile that held her conflicting emotions close, Sarah answered, "Of course. Just you wait, it'll be epic." But as they turned to leave, they didn't see the storm gathering on the horizon, a storm that would challenge everything they thought they knew. What would the truth bring to their superhero adventure? The superhero party was a whirlwind of colorful decorations, laughter, and the sweet smell of cookies baking in the oven. Sarah transformed the living room into a vibrant battleground. Red and blue streamers split the space, and poster-sized comic book cutouts decorated the walls. Jake bounced with excitement, as if he were soaring through the air, his cape flying high as he dashed to greet each guest. "Look, Mom! The Hulk is here!" Jake squeaked, pointing at Mark, who pretended to growl as he stepped into a Hulk-themed t-shirt. It made Jake burst into laughter, and for a moment, the joy felt genuine. "Come on, superheroes!" Sarah called, gathering the kids for games. As laughter echoed around her, she couldn't help but steal glances at Mark, who stood a little apart, his eyes searching the room, perhaps looking for escape. The storm of conversation between them still sat heavy on both their shoulders, but they masked it well, cloaked in their roles as supportive parents. The first game was a scavenger hunt. Clutching their little bags, Jake and his friends darted off to find items Sarah had thoughtfully hidden around the house. Each time she heard Jake's laughter, her heart swelled, but as the game progressed, so did her internal countdown. Time was running out before the truth opened up like a rift. "Mom, look! I found a cape!" Jake screamed, holding up a purple cloth he had discovered behind the couch. He looked so triumphant that she couldn't help but beam back at him. "Now I can save Gotham." "Great job, superhero!" She cheered, but her eyes drifted toward Mark. Anxiety coiled around her, tightening with every laugh that rang out like a reminder of the conversation looming ahead. Once the scavenger hunt wrapped up, the kids settled in for cupcakes. Everyone's eyes gleamed with excitement as Sarah placed the treats on the table. Just as she served the last one, a text notification buzzed on her phone from a name she didn't want to see, Angela. Sarah's heart raced. Angela was Mark's sister, and she rarely reached out unless it was important. She quickly glanced at Mark, whose face had drained of color. It was as if he could already sense the storm brewing within his family, and dread crept into her chest. "Let us make a toast." Mark's voice cut in, pulling Sarah back to the moment. "To superheroes and epic adventures." He raised his glass, reaching out to Jake, who followed suit excitedly. "To saving the world." Jake hollered, grinning wide and unaware of the weight of adulthood's silent battles. They clinked their glasses, and for a fleeting second, they felt united, caught in their own bubble of happiness. But as they celebrated, Sarah felt the grip of uncertainty tightening. Would this joyous celebration unravel once they stepped into the truth? After the cupcakes were devoured, and the final traces of frosting had smeared against smiling faces, Sarah knew it was now or never. They gathered in the living room, laughter still echoing softly but fading as they realized the shift in energy. "Jake, buddy, why don't you show your friends your superhero dance?" Mark suggested, nudging Jake toward the center of the room. "Okay." Jake beamed, bursting into an awkward, energetic spin, arms flailing beautifully as the other kids cheered. Their son's innocent joy brightened everyone in the room, yet it only amplified the contrast of what was next. Sarah exchanged a long look with Mark, then took a deep breath, the moment for their truth resting just behind the corners. Just as she began to speak, the doorbell rang. It felt like a pause in the universe. Everyone froze, shadows creeping back across the brightness of the party. Jake dropped his dance, wide-eyed with curiosity. "Who is it?" he asked, bouncing on his toes. Sarah and Mark shared an apprehensive glance before Mark moved to answer the door. In that heartbeat, Sarah felt the storm begin to gather again, a sense of something crashing on the horizon they could no longer ignore. As Mark opened the door, Sarah braced herself for the unexpected twist that could change everything. Who was waiting outside, and what would it mean for their world? Mark pulled the door open, and his expression morphed from surprise to something unreadable. Standing on the doorstep was a woman with warm, familiar eyes and a soft smile that seemed like a beacon. Sarah's stomach flipped as she recognized Angela, Mark's sister. She hadn't seen her in years, not since the family drama had torn them apart. "Angela," Mark stammered, his voice wavering between shock and disbelief. "Surprise," she chirped, stepping inside, her own excitement contrasting sharply with the tension that clung to the air. The room was filled with a mix of stunned silence and a whisper of curiosity as the kids turned their attention toward the new arrival. "Hi, Aunt Angela," Jake exclaimed, rushing forward, his cape trailing behind him like a comet. In that moment, any surface-level unease was swept aside by his innocent joy. "Look at you, little superhero." Angela knelt down and hugged Jake tightly. Sarah stood frozen, watching that embrace, her heart pounding as she processed all that was unfolding. "You didn't say you were coming?" Mark finally managed, his eyes darting between Sarah and his sister. Angela looked up, her expression morphing to one of sincerity. "I know. I wanted to surprise you all. I've missed you all so much." A collective sigh rippled through the room, an unspoken tension eased just a little. As the party resumed its course, Sarah felt the tension between her and Mark shift slightly. Angela's presence meant they could delay their inevitable conversation, and part of her was grateful for that. "You brought cupcakes, didn't you?" Jake chimed in, eyes shimmering with hope. Angela chuckled and shook her head, naturally slipping back into the role of beloved aunt. "I didn't bring cupcakes, but how about I help make some more with you, Jake?" Mark's face softened, the tension easing just a bit more, and Sarah's body relaxed as they moved into the kitchen, engaged in a swirl of flour and laughter. The sound of mixing bowls and chatter enveloped them like a warm blanket. But as the afternoon light faded outside, Sarah's heart felt heavy with the weight of what still lay ahead. Despite the cheerful ambience Angela's arrival brought, the conversations they had postponed loomed larger than the brightly decorated room. "Hey, Angela," Sarah called softly, once the kids were occupied. "It's really good to see you. I didn't expect this." Angela wiped her hands on a towel, her face unreadable for a moment. "Sarah, I came here not just for the kids, I came because there's something I need to tell you both." Mark entered the kitchen, a frown forming on his face, but it was quickly eclipsed by the bright laughter of Jake and the other kids as they burst in, faces smeared with icing. "What is it?" Mark asked Angela, and for a heartbeat, there was a tension that seeped back into the air, palpable and heavy. Before Angela could respond, Jake interrupted, handing Sarah a muddy cup filled with multicolored icing. "Look, Mom. I made us a drink." His joy was infectious, yet Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was a fragile bubble about to burst. "I love it, buddy," Sarah exclaimed, but her eyes lingered on Mark and Angela, trying to sense the unspoken words between them. "Let us keep having fun, right?" Angela said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But Sarah caught the heaviness behind it. "We'll have to talk later, Mark." The weight of that promise hung thick in the air as they pulled back into the laughter, pretending everything was fine while a storm brewed just below the surface. Something was shifting, and Sarah braced herself for the waves to come crashing down. How long could they hide from those truths? What would happen when the last cupcake was eaten and the laughter faded? As night settled outside, the party continued with games and joy, but inside Sarah's heart, a tumult raged. Would Angela's unexpected visit push them toward resolution, or tighten the chains of confusion further? The real question loomed larger than any cake. What did Angela know, and would the revelation change everything? The kitchen buzzed, laughter echoing against the walls as flour dust danced in the air. Angela and Jake were deep in conversation about superhero powers and the best ways to decorate cupcakes. Mark lingered near the counter, watching them with an expression that wavered between nostalgia and apprehension. Sarah tried to engage with the joy around her, but her heart was racing, tethered to that moment of tension just before the laughter began. "Mom, can we put sprinkles on the cupcakes?" Jake's voice broke through her thoughts as he looked up at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "Of course," Sarah replied, forcing a smile. She rummaged through the cabinet for the colorful sprinkles, willing herself to focus on the small joys of the moment, but her mind kept drifting back to Angela's intent gaze. What did she intend to say? As they finished mixing the batter, Mark stepped beside her, lowering his voice. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" His eyes were serious, and Sarah's stomach knotted. "Now?" she whispered, glancing toward the kids. They were completely absorbed in their floury mess, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents swirling around them. He nodded, and the two of them slipped out of the bustling kitchen, heading to the quiet of the living room. The moment the door closed behind them, Sarah felt the weight of the world settle on her shoulders. "Angela seems to be happy to see us," Mark began, his voice laced with uncertainty. "But there is something else, Sarah. Something I can feel, something she wants to share." She crossed her arms defensively, battling a swirl of emotions. "You think I don't feel it too? I want to know what is going on just as much as you do." A silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sounds of happy chatter. Each laugh from the children felt like a bittersweet reminder of the hope they both clung to. "Mark, our lives have been so complicated," she said softly. "If Angela has news, I don't know if it's good or bad. But we can't keep pretending we're fine. We need to talk about ourselves too." "Right," he said, frustration etched in his features. "But the kids, they need to have this time. Just a little more blissful ignorance." "Blissful ignorance?" Sarah echoed, shaking her head. "When is ignorance ever blissful? Eventually, it all comes crashing down." Their conversation hung heavy in the air, torn between the laughter inside and the reality outside. "Things can't stay the same," Mark said, his voice dropping lower. "What if Angela knows something about our family that changes everything?" "Then it changes everything," Sarah replied, her voice barely a whisper, yet resonant in the emptiness of the room. Footsteps approached, and the door swung open. Jake's excited face peeked in as he held a cupcake decorated with far too many sprinkles. "Mom! Dad! Come look at what I made." The instant diversion broke the tension like a bubble bursting. Mark could only grin at Jake's enthusiasm, the heaviness slipping away, at least for now. "We'll talk later?" Sarah suggested quietly, needing that promise to be tethered in the back of her mind. "Later," he agreed, yet she saw the worry lodged in his features. As they returned to the kitchen, the evening wore on, filled with bursts of laughter and playful antics, yet Sarah could still feel that ominous cloud lingering. Even as they piled icing high and feasted on sugary treats, something whispered beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to break through. The night dragged on, and the chatter grew dimmer until only a gentle hum of tired joy remained. Angela had ebbed back into the background, helping where her love could still shine through. Just as the kids settled onto the floor for a bedtime story, Angela caught Sarah's eyes across the room, her expression a mix of hope and trepidation. Time was running thin, and with every passing minute, the secrets assembled like a quietly ticking clock. What was that final secret she held, and when would it be unleashed? Would it lead them to clarity, or throw everything into chaos? Once the children were tucked into bed, their eyelids heavy with laughter and sugar, the room fell quiet. Sarah stood in the dimly lit living room, the sweet scent of frosting lingering in the air, but she felt anxious. It was now or never. The clock was ticking, and the weight of conversations unspoken loomed. Mark and Angela were seated on the couch, exchanging quiet words. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself. She was done postponing. As she approached, Mark looked at her with a lingering gaze full of both warmth and worry. "Can we talk?" she said, her voice steady but low. Angela shifted slightly. "Of course. I need to share something important." An ominous chill wrapped around Sarah as she took a seat, a tight knot forming inside her stomach. "Sarah," Angela began, her hands clasped in her lap. "There's a reason I came today. It isn't just about the cupcakes and the kids." Mark's expression shifted from relaxed to guarded, and he turned toward Angela. "What are you saying?" Angela steadied herself, glancing between them, her brow furrowing. "Dad reached out to me. He has news about Mom." Sarah felt cold tendrils of fear wrap around her heart. "What news?" Angela swallowed hard. "She wants to reconnect, to apologize for everything." A thick silence enveloped the room. Sarah's breath caught. "Is this a joke? After all these years? Why now?" "Because she's finally ready to face what she put us through, and she's sick," Angela admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "She doesn't have much time." Mark's expression shifted, the shadow of confusion deepening. "Sick?" "No." "Yes," Angela insisted, fighting through the wave of emotions crashing over her. "She's been battling cancer. She reached out to me because she wants to meet you both." Tears pricked at the corners of Sarah's eyes, blurring her vision. "And you think we should? After everything?" "Sarah," Mark interjected softly, his hand reaching out to touch hers. "I understand your anger. I really do. But we can't escape history. This might be our chance to heal, or at least, to lay it all out." A wave of emotions crashed over her: fear, anger, confusion, and an unrelenting longing for closure. She felt torn between the desire for family and the hurt that years of betrayal had sown deep into her heart. "Does our son even deserve to meet her?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Can we trust her now?" Angela spoke up, her tone resolute. "I can't answer that. But I think a part of healing is understanding where we came from. For the sake of Jake, and for ourselves, we might need to face the truth about all of this." Mark leaned closer to Sarah, his eyes searching hers. "You don't have to make this decision now. Just think about it." The room felt thicker, weighed down by the gravity of what was being discussed. Sarah's pulse quickened as her thoughts raced. Could she reconcile with a woman who had hurt them so deeply? Could they truly turn to each other after such a long estrangement? Before she could answer, Jake's light voice cut through the tension, calling from the hallway, "Mom. Dad. Is everything okay?" Mark and Angela exchanged glances, and a soft smile spread across Sarah's face. "Yes, buddy. We're fine." As Jake surfaced under the light, the world around them shifted again. "Can we watch a superhero movie?" he asked with gleeful innocence, oblivious to the weight of the adult decisions looming over them. "Sure," Mark replied, his voice warm, but Sarah could feel the underlying tension. As they settled back in the living room, a flickering light illuminated their faces, casting shadows that held both hope and uncertainty. A superhero movie began to play, but Sarah's heart felt heavy. She wasn't ready for the potential fallout if they reached out to the past. It could feel like opening a door to unwelcomed heartbreak. But there was her son's innocent joy, swelling around them like a protective barrier. "We'll talk about this later," she whispered to Mark, squeezing his hand, the quiet promise hanging in the air. As the movie played on, their focus shifted momentarily from the past, but Sarah knew that was just a temporary reprieve. They still had to confront the truth about their family, both the pain and the potential for healing. Within the swirling colors of the screen, she felt the first sparks of determination igniting within her. She realized it was never just about the past but about what it could mean for their future. Maybe stepping into the unknown wouldn't be so terrifying after all. As they all surrounded each other, sharing in Jake's laughter and cheers, for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt hope threading through her heart. Perhaps they could redefine their story together. Tomorrow would hold challenges, but they could face them, just like true superheroes. They could step into their hearts, fortify their connections, and uncover whatever lay hidden beneath. Boldly, they would charge into the unknown. It was time for transformation, and Sarah was finally ready to embrace it. Don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. You need to subscribe now and hit that bell for notifications. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. They won't want to miss it. This is the moment to step up for the community.